Welcome to this workshop on stress-free playing, becoming a more fearless, confident, resilient performer. I am so glad that you chose to watch this presentation, and I'm excited to share some ideas with you on how you can further your personal development in music performance. Can you think of a time when you had a performance that felt awesome, engaging, and musically moving? This is the state of flow that we as musicians strive for. Wouldn't it be great to feel that every time we perform, that our playing reflects our preparation and our abilities? The opposite, of course, is the feeling of choking under pressure, of the inhibitions that can be associated with public performance of any kind, whether music or test taking or public speaking or even sports. I first discovered the choking under pressure as a youth in a particularly memorable recital performance. I was the teacher's star piano student and was feeling pretty confident. I performed frequently, accompanying the school jazz band and show choir, community musical theater, and more. Well, things were going quite well during that recital until that first mistake. My muscles tightened, my heart raced, my mind went blank, and then occupied itself with trying to figure out why I had made that mistake. And then the next mistake occurred. From there, it snowballed into a miserable experience for all. Probably much more for me than anyone else, but my fight or flight response kicked in and I was ready to run away and never return. I hope you have never felt that way. But if you have, I'd love to give you some hope and encouragement that you too can change. I began an active search for how to perform without stress, without those physical, mental, and psychological responses, and feeling great engagement with my music, finding focus and flow. After numerous workshops, courses, books on overcoming performance anxiety, and an intensive study of research on sports psychology and the latest exciting advances in growth mindset and neuroplasticity, I would love to share with you what I have found works for me and works for many others out there who experience performance anxiety in music performance, as well as a variety of other types of performance. There are so many exciting ways this knowledge can help you.
So what is stress? Well, stress can be defined as the degree to which you feel overwhelmed or unable to cope as a result of pressures that are unmanageable. Performance anxiety is a fear about one's ability to perform a specific task. Well, let's first look at what happens when we get under pressure to perform well. The stress response includes three areas: physical, mental, and psychological. So physically, our muscles contract, they tighten. It is really difficult to play like that, unless, of course, you've been practicing that way, and then it's still really difficult. Don't practice that way either. Muscles contract, respiration changes, light, shallow breathing, not enough oxygen to the brain then. Our blood pressure increases, our senses are enhanced, we hear every detail of everything, and then our non-essential processes go offline. When you feel those butterflies in the stomach, that's actually your digestive system, which is non-essential at that moment, going offline. So mentally, our brain speeds up. It literally does. The brain waves change. Our attention shifts, and we begin overthinking. Too much attention to physical function. Psychologically, of course, dread, anxiety, panic, a terrible way to perform. Not fun at all. But not all performance anxiety is bad, though. It can cause us to work harder and prepare smarter, as well as give energy to our performance. It can increase focus and help us enter a state of flow. Without it, we can be bored and more mechanical, which might show up in our disengagement and lack of connection with the music. We want to develop the skills that help us find our own individual zone of optimal functioning. It's a balance. So in this presentation today, we'll be discussing activation strategies that will help us develop a stress-free yet energized performance ability. We will talk about confidence and trust, a pre-performance routine, mental quiet, focus and flow, and mental resilience. Confidence and trust. And Dweck's seminal book, Mindset, The New Psychology of Success, discusses two mindsets: The fixed mindset is one that accepts the idea of predetermined abilities, aptitudes, and talents that can only be proven or not. Read over those for a minute and see if any of those sound familiar to you. It's basically that we are fixed, we can't change. We are good or bad. A growth mindset, though, is one that believes that traits like these are not fixed, but can be cultivated, learned, and changed. Read over those. See if any of those sound familiar to you. Challenges help me grow. Failure is an opportunity to grow. It's all about growth and change. We have hope and confidence that we can change. Most people have a combination of both. See where you're at. See where you want to go with this. So with a growth mindset, we can focus on success and we can learn from our mistakes in a positive way. We can literally change our habits of thinking as well as performing. Well, even if you don't feel you have a growth mindset currently, you can change. So the great news for all of us is this. It turns out that you can teach an old dog new tricks. People used to think that the adult brain was set and couldn't be changed very much. Neuroscientists, with the advent of functional magnetic resonance imaging, have found that the brain constantly regenerates itself and has the ability to create new neural pathways. It can actually rewire itself for change at any age. Neural pathways connect different areas of the brain. Each pathway is associated with a particular action. Every time we think, feel, or do something, we strengthen this pathway. Habits are well-traveled pathways. Our brain wants to take the easy path and do what has become a habit. New thoughts carve new pathways. Repetition of the thought strengthens the pathways. Old pathways get used less, and then they weaken and fall away. So this is true of thoughts and actions, such as playing correct notes, good phrasing, certainly thoughts, as in positive thinking. And this is why good thoughts and correct playing should be done enough to create good habits. Interestingly enough as well, scientists have found that even mental practice or imagery also fires neurons as if we had actually done it. They've seen brain activity in the areas of the brain that control muscle movement even if the muscles actually aren't moving. Well, this puts everything into perspective that follows in this presentation. It puts it in a larger context, and we can have the confidence that these things physically change the brain. It really does work. It can make all the difference. These things will work for you too. And you can change. You have a growth mindset now, right? So, how can this understanding help us become better performers? Well, first, make sure that when you practice, you establish good habits so that you can be successful and develop confidence in your preparation. Well, let's talk briefly about what this might look like. So, deliberate practice, practicing with intention. Very different than mindless repetition, which a lot of people fall prey to, especially if you feel like, I just don't have much time to do this. You sit down, you just want to run through something, and then there you go. You're done. You practiced, right? You knew that E flat really was an E. Next time you'll get it right, right? No, it doesn't work that way. Practice makes permanent. How you practice is what will happen in a performance. So if you define a goal for yourself, and if you break something down into smaller elements that you can repeat successfully, because again, practice makes permanent, you will be much more successful in your practice. So you can also envision the result. So you've broken it down, you have a little section you're working on, envision what you want it to sound like. Know what you want it to sound like, intention. And then mentally perform it. Hear yourself in your mind do it, but don't actually depress the keys. As we said before, it really does work in your brain as if you've done it. So we're going to mentally perform, and then we physically perform that spot, that section. We've envisioned, we mentally gone through it. We're now ready for success. Do it, and then evaluate the result. Note the successes, anything that you thought went well, no matter how small. And then identify any problems. If there was a mistake or something didn't feel right, figure out why. What actually caused the problem? It is not that you were good or bad. It is something else. We need to decide what is the problem, identify the cause of that problem, and then come up with a strategy for how to fix it. After we have that strategy, let's test it out And then we repeat the process until we're satisfied that we truly have and can consistently produce that spot, that section, the way we want it to be. So we also need to practice our thought behaviors as well as our physical actions. It is critical to our confidence that we develop a balanced perspective. Much study has been done recently on the power of positivity. It is in lots of books, lots of studies. We can literally retrain our brain to be more positive. Since, of course, we're developing our growth mindset now, and we know about neuroplasticity, we can make it a habit to reframe negative thoughts into more positive ones. You will develop the habit of thinking more positively if you just think positively. For instance, as soon as a negative thought enters your mind, stop, note it without judgment or criticality, and then turn it into something positive. Think something different. It's amazing how quickly we can actually rewire our brains to have a more positive outlook by just practicing positive statements in our mind. As we reframe our thinking from negativity to positivity, we need to work on silencing the inner critic as well. Often we say things to ourselves that we would never say to someone else. Would you really tell someone, "You idiot, why can't you ever play a hymn without mistakes? You're terrible at this." Well, it's not so hard to tell ourselves that though, is it? How about reframing our thinking? How about changing it to something non-judgmental and encouraging and constructive? It might sound more like, "Good try on that hymn today. I really like the fact that you helped the congregation breathe really well through the phrases. There were some interesting alternate harmonies today, though. I guess I'll look at why that happened. Maybe I could practice the pedal line at measure 6 to 7, where the jump is not always landed on correctly. I know it will go much better the next time." Sounds a little phony? Well, the more you practice reframing your thoughts in a more positive way, the more it becomes a habit to do so, and you will soon catch yourself always being your best proponent rather than your own worst heckler. The old neural pathways of negative judgmental thinking can lessen when used less often, and the new neural pathways created by the new positive thoughts are developed. It can truly become a habit to think more positively. The most important point is that you don't judge yourself, good or bad. It diverts your valuable attention from important aspects of performance to things that you can't control. When Thomas Edison was asked how he kept trying to invent the light bulb, although he had failed 10,000 times, he said, "I don't understand. It takes 10,000 experiments to invent a light bulb." He didn't see his tries as failures, but as an opportunity to learn how to be successful. He didn't let others' perceived judgments count. He just kept learning and working at it. Don't worry about what others think of you. Let it go. In reality, it's the fear of external judgment that is inhibiting. People will always have an opinion. They're entitled to it, but don't give more weight to their opinion than the trust that you are developing in your own strengths, progress, and improvements. Focus on what you are happy with about yourself. Don't look externally for your self-worth, bad or good. When you look to others' comments to define your sense of self, you give them all the power. When someone gives you negative or no feedback at all, though, let it go. Don't discount helpful comments. Just use your new growth mindset to see how it can help your skill development. But don't let it define your sense of self, which is the fixed mindset way of looking at things. As much as we want the positive comments as well, don't let them define you either, or you're going to continue to seek that in the future and only feel good when they do give you positive feedback. Really, all that matters is how you feel about you. Keep a growth mindset and don't worry about what you think that someone else thinks. Chances are they aren't even thinking about your imperfections. Most people are cheering you on in life. However, life's too short to worry about external opinions. Build your own self-confidence as you're learning in today's presentation. Practice self-love and acceptance and lots of mindfulness. So let's look at some specific confidence-building techniques. One that I really like is to just prepare well in advance for any possible situation. Try to get your music well in advance. Obviously, this is not always important. Sometimes we're given music at the last minute and we have to deal with it. However, we can ask for it in advance. We can try to encourage that we get it in advance and at least work on it as soon as we do have it. We can break difficult music down into manageable chunks. Start the hardest parts first, maybe the last part first. It always gives you confidence if you've done that. By the time you get to that spot, it's not scary anymore when you're in an actual live performance situation. Create a schedule for yourself. You can also learn seasonal music early. You know that Christmas is coming every single year. Prepare for it in advance. Also, practice performing in increasingly difficult situations. I always practice recitals many times before performing them, even with the clothes I will wear, because you never know when clothing difficulties you might encounter. Have a dress rehearsal. I always run through every aspect of the performance, walking out, putting my music on the stand, centering, performing the concert, bowing. Even if I'm all by myself doing it, I still practice it. If you can't recreate it entirely on location, mental run-throughs, again, every detail, are really helpful too. And in fact, you should be doing them in addition anyway. You'll feel a lot more confident and you'll set yourself up for success if you've run through it many times physically and mentally. Here's another confidence builder. After every practice, write 3 things down, or at least go over them in your mind. 1 thing that went well, 1 thing that improved, and 1 instance of great effort during your practice. It will change your practicing. You will start looking for those positive things every time you practice. It's really great. You can also build a mental library of successes and practice recalling them on demand. This is a great thing to do, kind of like a little brag book for yourself. Pull it up every time, even if they're little successes. It doesn't have to be major. It can be 1 rehearsal thing that went really well, or something that you feel like you're doing. Anything mentally, run through it in your mind and trust yourself. Pre-performance routine. Well, I don't know about you, but when I first became a parent, I had a difficult baby that seemed like she never slept. After many late night walks to the park, rides in the car, trying to put her to sleep on a running dryer, it's supposed to soothe the baby, I started to realize that if we came up with an exact order for the bedtime routine, sleep became much more automatic. So maybe a bath and a warm bottle and the warm jammies and the bedtime singing and a story, whatever it is that might work, patting on the back, a particular order, it kind of sets something up in the brain that becomes a routine. Well, we can use the same idea to program ourselves to release stress and pressure and to perform at our best. If you Google NBA free throw rituals, you'll see that many of the NBA stars have a specific free throw routine that they do to put themselves in a state of mind for successfully completing a free throw with all eyes on them in the critical moments of a game. They repeat this every time they throw a free throw. Here's some examples. Jerry Stackhouse bends his knees so low he looks like he's in a squat. Steve Nash takes several imaginary shots before getting the ball. He licks the tips of his fingers and then uses them to comb back his hair before attempting the shot. Alonzo Mourning's free throw routine includes tapping his wristband to his chin, then to his forehead. Jason Nash blows a kiss to his family before free throw as a way to tell them he's thinking of them. You could try that one if you'd like before performing hymns. Sacrament meeting, I'm really kidding, don't do that. But you can watch these NBA free throw rituals on YouTube, and it's fascinating. It's really fun to watch. Well, as musicians, we can utilize this idea, but probably not with the blowing the kiss to our congregation before we play the sacrament hymn. Instead, let's talk about some things that we can do. So here's a pre-performance routine called centering that has been used by many professional musicians and is outlined by Dr. Noah Kageyama in his course, Bulletproof Musician. He's a music performance psychology instructor at Juilliard School of Music. As a side note, I highly encourage you to visit his performance anxiety blog and sign up for his free email newsletters on performance anxiety. His website is listed in the resource section of your handout. So let's talk about some of these centering ideas. So make it a routine, actually follow an order, and you can make it what you want, but here is an outline of one. Identify a focal point. That can be middle C, it can be a piston, it can be something that you can look at every single time to start engaging your mind in what you're about to do and get it free of the distractions around you. Next is form a clear intention. This intention should be kind of like a mindfulness or yoga mantra, something that you want to have happen, although say it in the now. So say it in the present, like I play effortlessly, or I play engaging music, or I breathe with my music. Something that you want to have happen, say it like it's now. Breathe mindfully. Now let's talk about breathing mindfully just a little bit. I really want you to practice this with me. So right now, breathing mindfully means to breathe with your diaphragm. So I want you to focus on how that feels, breathing deep within your torso. Feel it, feel the expansion of the rib cage. Let's go ahead and try one of these right now. So nice deep breath. You can close your eyes if you feel like it. Just deep breath and feeling the expansion. Ready? Nice deep breath. From the diaphragm, breathe in, breathe in, breathe in, breathe in. Hold it, hold it, hold it. And let it out again, feeling the air escaping. If you breathe deeply every time, it actually increases the oxygen flow to your brain, which we need. Next thing is release key muscle tension. One way that you can get started practicing this is if you tighten everything. So right now, just try it with me. Tighten every muscle in your body, including your face. It's going to look kind of funny. Just tighten everything. Tighten, 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 tighten as tight as you can. And then slowly let it go. Release, 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 release. Let it go even more. And just bear with me a little bit. Let's do a little mindfulness here. I want you to think from the top of your head, releasing all energy. Right now, go ahead and do it with me. From your neck, from your shoulders, your arms, your hands, your fingers, letting it go, releasing all tension down through your torso, your legs, your calves, your feet, out your toes. You should feel relaxed, ready for a nap, but don't take one. We're not done. Next, feel your center. As you're sitting on a chair or a bench, you want to feel like you are grounded. This is a kind of a martial arts sort of a feeling, if you've ever done that. You want to feel your center. Some people try to do an imaginary hula hoop and get smaller and smaller, and you kind of feel like that inner core. Just feel that inner core. Feel your center. Repeat a process cue. You need to come up with what this is. Since this is meant to be done before you start playing, you can actually even be rubbing your fingers, tapping your knee, saying a word to yourself, something that is a process cue that you do every single time. Again, we're trying to train the brain that this is what happens, and then it performs successfully. The last thing we do is commit and direct our energy. So we're going to feel it all bundled up inside. Just bundle up every bit of energy that you have everywhere from all extremities, all into the center. Let it burst out through the top of your head, out to your audience, your congregation, your listeners. Now, are you really going to want to sit and do this 10-minute type of thing every time? No, you do need to do basic training and practice it every day and every time you sit down, and you can actually get it to where it's really, really fast, maybe a second or two. It really can happen. So practice doing that, basic training, practice it. Don't wait till you're trying to do it and it's very distracting. But if it becomes automatic and a habit for success, like an NBA free throw routine, it will help you. Practice it, simulation training, and just practice it live at some time, and then practice with some adversity going on. We'll talk about that in a minute. So another important aspect of stress-free playing is to develop mental quiet. So you can imagine creating a still pond in your mind. Breathe deeply, as we said. Practice mindfulness. Mindfulness has really just, it's become the byword in psychology in all different areas, behavioral psychology, cognitive behavioral therapy, all kinds of things. Mindfulness. If you don't know about it, look it up on YouTube. There's clips of it. There's apps to do mindfulness. There's lots of websites that talk about it. Really, really great thing to practice. It helps you to focus on the here and the now, as opposed to worry. It helps still your inner critic. And then practice the things that we've talked about, relaxing and releasing tension, breathing mindfully, running through things mentally, preparation. Focus and flow. Have you ever been excited to capture just that right picture on your phone camera, only to discover that it was already filled to capacity with other videos and pictures? Well, just like memory and storage on our phones or our computers, we do have a fixed amount of attentional capacity as well. We need to watch where it goes so that we have the right attention for what is needed, not on extraneous things. Task relevance. So just like maybe an adjustable flashlight beam, our attentional width can be broad or narrow. We can focus on just the notes coming up on the page, narrow, or we can focus on the choir director, the choir, and how our accompaniment fits into that, wide. We also have an attentional direction as well. We can focus on how our fingers feel on the keys, internal focus, or the person in the back row of the audience that is clipping their fingernails. Yes, that actually did happen to me one time in a performance. That is external. We need to be aware of these ways that our attention can be diverted and to make sure that it is on the most task relevant areas. Probably not the fingernail clipping audience member, but probably on the choir director or on our music and how it feels and sounds. Above all, we must keep our attention on task relevant areas and not let it wander to the mistakes we just made. The tricky section coming up, what we will be making for lunch, the class we'll be teaching in an hour, or berating ourselves. Even saying positive things can distract your attention from the task at hand. Keep your attention on the music. So let's talk about the characteristics of the flow state. Have you ever felt so immersed in your music that you lost all sense of time and felt at one with the music? Or have you been in maybe a brainstorming meeting and just felt the ideas were coming at you? Well, that is flow. Itzhak Perlman, famous violinist, once performed through an earthquake. When asked afterward how he was able to do this, he asked, well, what earthquake? That is the flow state. So how can we achieve it more consistently? Let's define it. So it can be defined as the optimal state of consciousness where we feel our best and perform our best. Complete concentration on the task, clarity of goals, transformation of time. The experience is rewarding. It feels effortless and at ease. We lose all sense of ourselves. So let's talk about how this works, because we all want to achieve that, but how do we get it? Well, it all comes down to neurobiology. Psychology today defines the physical process that occurs causing this state. Flow is the product of profound changes in standard brain function. In that state, our brainwaves move from the fast-moving beta wave of normal wake consciousness down to the far slower borderline between alpha and theta waves. The prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for the executive function of the body and houses most of our higher cognitive function, actually goes quiet. That part of our brain is the inner critic, that voice of doubt and disparagement. In the flow state, this area is deactivated, so we're far less critical and far more courageous. During flow, the brain floods our system with 5 different chemicals. All are pleasure-inducing, performance-enhancing chemicals with considerable impacts on creativity. That's great. How do we get that, though? Well, one way that Dr. Noah Kageyama suggests is to keep your attention on the music. And we achieve flow through singing brain. It can be created by leading with your inner voice, hearing the sound as you play it, and listening to yourself without analysis. It does take some practice to get, though. You want to really learn to listen to the music as you're playing it or slightly in front of where you're playing. Not way in advance, not a problem spot, not something that we're thinking about way ahead, but as we're playing or just in front of it. Glenn Gould, famous pianist, often hummed while he played. His recording engineers even had to work to remove that sound from his recordings. He had singing brain and was humming to hear what he wanted in advance of actually playing the notes. Of course, this state of being immerses the brain in the experience of playing rather than focusing on potential problems. Singing brain, of course, also can help eliminate monkey mind, where the mischievous mind jumps from one thing to another, totally derailing our train of thought and diverting our attention to the wrong thing. So, a great way to practice this and to develop it is through adversity training. So you can practice with distractions. It might be your kids running around the room, maybe the radio playing a different song than the one you're working on, the metronome set to a different tempo than what you're actually playing. Dream it up, be creative. What can you do to add some distractions? Practice under adverse conditions. Maybe it's when you're tired, hungry, hot, a different place, a different instrument than you're used to. Record yourself, audio, visual, easy in today's world with our phone. Just sit your phone out, record yourself. In fact, it's a really great idea that I strongly recommend because you can learn a lot about yourself and your playing if you do this. You can also gradually increase the stakes, so start with low stress. So like one person listening to you, or the recording, or just your family. Build it up to more stressful situations or bigger performances. So here's a couple of other strategies for training the mind towards focus and flow. One is called attention scripting strategy. So you can actually envision the whole performance and try to keep your mind sticking with it. Another is to practice performing exactly how you want the performance to go. Every detail, even what you're thinking. So your arrival at the place that you're going to play, your waiting, what you're going to be thinking about when you're waiting, your setup, what you're going to think about while you're setting up, putting your music on the stand, sitting at the organ, performing, what you'll do after, everything that you'll do. Repeat it until you're comfortable and you can go through it. It becomes less unnerving when you're actually in a performance. Another method is attention control training. And that basically is you play as long as you can maintain attention. And then when your mind wanders, don't be judgmental, but let it come back gently to where you need to be and keep going. You might stop and just see what happened. Maybe you can recreate that in your mind and then not do that the next time. Not let your mind wander. See if you can go longer and longer each time. Mental resilience. Okay, so you've prepared well for performance. You're working on confidence and trust in your preparation with intention as well as focus and flow. But as with anything, you have to work to establish the habits of success. It will happen a little at a time. Congratulate yourself on each step that you're taking and each success, no matter how small. You'll find that over time, you will feel less and less stress and more confidence. But yet, mistakes can still happen, especially as you're learning. Show yourself grace and mercy. Build mental resilience. So here are some problems with mistakes. It diverts your attentional resources. Physical and mental responses inhibit your optimal playing. You can have a snowball effect, and it gets worse and worse. So how can we learn to bounce back quickly? It's rare that anyone plays completely perfectly and exactly as they intended. However, it's what we do with the mistakes that count. If we grimace or focus on the mistake, let it take our attention away, replay a note, any other disruptive action, it gets in the way of our confidence, of course, and our performance. I am always amazed at the world-class figure skaters who fall on the ice during an Olympic performance and then get up and finish the routine as if nothing had happened. That's what we need to do. But it is tough. It takes a lot of practice. So instead of getting down on yourself, here's a few ideas for a more productive response. So rapid recovery reflex, that's really what we're trying to train up, right? That we can immediately fix our problem, go on, not let it get in the way. Let it go. Don't judge. Practice doing that. Practice relaxing when something happens. Here's a great one. Have a recovery cue. That means something, and of course, since our hands and our feet are busy, it needs to be something, maybe a mental word that we say to ourselves, like here and now, or stay with it, or anything that you can practice doing exactly the same one every single time. And then we can practice recovering after. And then when we get in a performance or a higher stake situation, that recovery cue can work for us to become automatic, and it will help cue us to do the right thing, staying with it. We can focus on the now, mindfulness. Here's another one. Don't overcompensate. Some people make a mistake and then they think, okay, well, I'll just make it look like that's what I intended. So over here, I'll do something more or something really big. Don't do that. Don't overcompensate for it. Just let it go. Keep moving. Singing brain and really practicing getting good with that is also another way. So here's a few ideas for mental protection for yourself. They work for some people, not for others. Maybe one works for you, the other doesn't. Try them out, see what you think. Just like in the Incredibles movie, where Violet creates a force field around her family to protect them from all the outside influences, you can have an attentional force field. So literally see what that might look like. Some people see it just like Violet's force field. Whatever it might look like to you, warm, fuzzy light, or whatever works for you. An attentional force field. When you step inside to perform, everything just is protected from the outside. Another one is a circle of success. So in your mind's eye, draw a circle around yourself and step into it as you get onto the organ bench. I am now in my circle of success. I always play perfectly when I am in this circle of success. Sounds phony? It actually can work if you train yourself to believe in it. As we talked about before, those neural pathways can be strong. So above all, let your focus be on expression of the music. Find your flow in creating beautiful music. So get into the moment, shape the phrases, let the music breathe, create beauty with your music. Keep your focus on helping your listeners experience emotion through your music. You can be engaging, and if that's where your focus and attention goes, it's in the right place. Not on worry, not about fear, not on what I did well or didn't do well. None of those things really matter. It's what we do with the music. And if we keep that focus, it makes all the difference, I have found. So here are some resources that you might find helpful. You do not need to hurry and write them down. They are all on the resource section of today's handout. So with practice and effort, you really can be successful in developing the skills needed to experience stress-free playing. So I told you about one of my early experiences playing. I was horrified. Boy, that inner critic was really working for me. And so fast forward years later of working through a lot of these concepts and these skills. As I said, I played for a number of different, very high stress situations. I do a lot of performing of recitals. I'll just share really quickly with you one little positive experience I had last year. I was performing some recitals for about 5 days it's about a week in Belgium and the Netherlands. And I was performing in the Netherlands one night, and then I needed to go on to the next venue and perform. What happened when I did that is I actually got into some traffic and I couldn't get there in time. I got there right before it started, only to find out that the beautiful art walk in as big as Basilica, big cathedral, where I needed to perform, had two big organs. One was a French classic and one was a German Baroque organ. And the pieces that I had submitted were not the ones that they had put on the program. I had submitted a few and said these are the ones I preferred, and they gave me some others. They were not the ones I had practiced. I got there right when the concert was starting because of my issue and trying to go such a distance in a short period of time. And I had to go play Bach Prelude and Fugue on an unfamiliar organ in a big live performance in front of other people. And I practiced my centering, I practiced what I was doing, and wow, what a difference it made in the way I felt. I went at it excited to perform, and I left feeling happy that I performed. It can make a difference, even when there's high pressure stakes and you can't actually practice what you want. If you get familiar and comfortable with these skills, you can find peace and joy. So practice these skills one at a time. Show yourself love as you learn and grow. You can feel peace and joy when you perform. And I know that this is true and that I know you can do it. You can all develop these great skills.